Hello, everybody. It's Grizzly once again from Lexington, Kentucky, from coast to coast and around the world. We're back again. We have a very special person. We have Mr. Miller this evening. Welcome, Mr. Miller. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. Doing wonderful. So why don't you explain yourself and tell us a little about yourself?
First, I got to give a shout out to my research partner, Mike Feltner. He's working tonight, so, but you know, that's how it is. He got put on second shift. So, but I am 58. I drive for UPS, and I've been doing this for about 15, 16 years because of pretty much a television news station report about a sighting in Ohio got me interested, and I didn't think I would be doing this too long because I would take a quick peek and then I'd be satisfied and I would be done. But what happened is the more I looked, the more I found, and I got sucked in.
Wow, that's what usually happens.
Yep. And Mike and I started a group called the Ohio Night Stalkers back in 2014. We ran out of an area in Adams County, Ohio. And that led to us being on a couple television programs, Tearing the Woods. Also, These Woods Are Haunted. And then later on a documentary called On the Trail of Bigfoot.
Wow. I've probably seen every one of them. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So what was going through your mind when you were being chased out?
This won't make any sense, but we stopped different places that night, and it didn't really dawn on us that they were actually following us out. We just would stop and do noises, do wood knocks, and all of a sudden they would be there. And it really didn't dawn on us we were being followed until like one of the last times we stopped. And that's when we got out, and my son Jordan did a howl, and he wasn't even done doing his thing when we got two of them replied, and there was one on each side of the road, and that's when dawned on me, like, oh my God, we're surrounded, we're flanked. I didn't like that, and I thought, are they going to let us out of here? And it was scary already, but it got really scary at that moment.
I bet. So what did y'all end up doing?
What happened in that instance there, we heard a sound. It sounded like air was escaping out of something. This was at the very end of that night. And I thought Mike had driven over. The other guy's name was Mike also. And I thought had driven over something and punctured a tire. So I walked over to his vehicle, and it wasn't coming from his vehicle. It was coming from the wood line. So I walked over and went into the wood line because I'm curious. I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Did someone throw a scuba tank in the woods? And as I stood there listening, and then it would stop, and then it would happen again, I realized, wait a minute, that's not air escaping out of anything. That is something standing there within 25 yards of me or less. I can't see because it's pitch black, and it is breathing air into its lungs and letting that out. And because I got in there close to it, not knowing it was there, it emitted a very low, very guttural, I don't know if you want to call it a roar, a scream, and I actually felt it reverberate off my chest like being at a heavy metal concert. And to me, this was like a final warning, like, get the out of here or else. And that's basically what we did. We got out of there.
Did you ever get sick that night or the next day?
I never got sick. I was kind of in shock. And like the next weekend, I had my son. And at that time where I was living, I had a full finished basement, and I was backed up against a small area of woods. Nothing Bigfooty or nothing like that, though. But an owl had come back there and made some sounds about 3 in the morning and woke me up. And I initially woke up and thought, "Oh my God, the thing followed me home." But
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of rattled for a while over that, actually.
Yeah. Well, usually people that does have their first encounter, and especially as close as you all's got with the other ones, that flanked you and are on all sides.
Well, that wasn't the first.
Really.
No. No, to
Usually
go
they come
back,
back
like
PTSD and they'll never go back in the woods again. So what's the other one?
Well, before I met Mike and started going out at night doing research, I started basically just reading stuff online until I ran into somebody that was in Ohio, and they invited me to go along. But these people only went during the daytime, and the guy took me under his wing. His name was George Taylor, and he took me to some areas and showed me storm damage to trees, and then he showed me unnatural damage. You know, the structures being made, a tree bent and driven into the ground like a St. Louis arch, and showed me what to look for, stuff like that. But just had a moment where we were back in an area and something was like following us. And of course, my friends at work made fun of me. Oh, he probably had someone there and they did that on purpose to scare you. And I'm like, why go through all that trouble to scare a truck driver? You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be on the
Right.
news. It's not going to make it to the paper. So I did a test. I waited about a month maybe, and I called in sick. This is years ago, but I didn't tell anyone I was going there. Not that guy, not anybody. The only person who knew I was going over there was God. And I went over there and I did the same kind of thing, walked the trail, went off the trail, went up this dry creek bed, did some whistles, did a knock, no reply, and went back to the trail and finished walking the park. And the same thing happened. At some point, something started following me. And I'm like, okay. And I told the skeptics at work, I said, now either someone lives in this woods and they're there just on call in case a Bigfooter comes by, or that was something following me. And I wasn't followed until I went off the trail and did what I did. So, like I said, the more I looked into stuff, the more things happened. And
Wow.
of course, the first time I ever went with Mike and a person named Mark Mills, we went to East Fork State Park. That was my first night hike. We hiked back in there a couple miles, and it was in October also, about a year before this happened. And it was drizzly, rainy. They did some knocks. They did a howl. I was kind of just along for the ride. I was like the third wheel kind of dude that night, just kind of watching everything. We stayed there a couple hours. Nothing happened. Started raining a little bit harder, and they said, "Okay, let's pack it up and go." Nothing's happening, and we started out of there. And I'm happy at this point. I'm thinking, okay, I went on my first night hike. Looks like I'm going to survive it. Scratch it off the list. It's all good. About maybe 2 or 3 steps into that, getting out of there, all of a sudden, here comes a rock. And this rock, we couldn't see it because it's 2 something in the morning probably. But as it's in flight, it is hitting branches and snapping them, not bouncing off of them, but snapping them. So this rock was bigger than a softball, not as big as a bowling ball, I'm going to guess. Hit a tree next to me with a ton of force, bounced off, and rolled end over end. And at that point, I was pretty much, freaked out. I didn't freak out, but I was extremely worried. And I was I tell this during our lectures. Um, I was worried because I was in the back of the line, and anyone that watches a horror movie knows what happens to the guy in the back of the line.
That's why I use my cane if I'm running.
And we still had about 45 minutes or so to walk out of there. And as we made our way out, maybe 15 minutes later, another rock. Same thing. It's going over our heads. We're ducking. It's snapping branches. And I didn't think I'd see my kid again. I didn't think I was getting out of there alive that night. I said the Lord's Prayer under my breath the rest of the way we hiked out of there. And then when I got off of that trail back onto the main road, if you call it that, I knelt down and kissed the ground. And I pretty much retired from Bigfooting that night. That was just too intense. And I was done. But I had all winter to think about it. And the question of all this and what's going on ate at me all winter. And then I unretired that next spring, and I decided I'm not giving up because I want answers. And but I decided that a walking stick and a 3-inch knife weren't going to cut it anymore. So I got my concealed carry permit. Not that that's really going to do any good. I don't intend on shooting anything, but just kind of a peace of mind kind of.
Right.
But yeah, you don't forget stuff like that when it happens.
Do you have nightmares?
No, I'm good.
So you go out still and investigate?
Oh yeah, we actually took Russell Acord out in July to one of our spots in Adams County.
You still have an encounter since the last encounter that you
Yeah,
talked about?
we go to a different place now. But it's only 5 or 6 miles by the way the crow would fly from that original area, and we think they're kind of raising their young in this area. And a couple years ago, we basically call blasted a wolf howling just to kind of, you know, introduce ourselves to the neighborhood, and they didn't like that. I think it spooked one of their young ones, and they took it out on us. They pretty much pelted us with rocks in this area. They've damaged
Really?
the vehicle. It shattered Mike's windshield, and I've got dents in my Jeep, and yeah,
Oh my.
yep. We had stuff happen the night Russ was there. Had a couple rocks thrown, had a lot of wood knocks, and yeah.
That's crazy. That really is. Especially getting something that big thrown at you in
Yeah,
your
this was
vehicle.
Yeah, this was different because before I've had rocks thrown, but they've always kind of been in your vicinity, like they're just trying to warn you, but not there. After we spooked one of their young ones, they were throwing to hit. They were ticked.
Yeah, I can see why. Especially if the young ones are that close to you all.
Yeah, of course I'm guessing now. I mean, I don't know for sure. It's just an educated guess. Well, you could some people would say non-educated guess, but just a guess.
Right. Right.
But everything unfolded. We played it. We call blasted a wolf howling. Nothing happened. This is after sitting in pitch black and talking normal voice for 45 minutes. Then we call blasted the wolf howling. Then we actually waited 15 minutes and call blasted wolves howling. And right after that is when we heard some distress, and it moved across the ridge line, actually towards us and down. And to me, it sounded like a gibbon monkey. And then it quit. And then about 20 some minutes later, kaboom. So just putting 2 plus 2 together right there.
Oh, absolutely.
And of course, I got skeptic people where I work. Oh, that's somebody messing with you throwing rocks. And I'm like, yeah, come if you could see this terrain. Number one, there's no one within miles of this place living. And the terrain is so rugged, it's hard to work, or it's not work, excuse me, it's hard to walk during the day. And I told this person, I said, I said, you're going to tell me that someone's out there at night at 2 or 3 in the morning in pitch black walking with no light on. They would kill themselves. Plus, this is Adams County, man. People are armed out there, and you don't sneak up on people out there. It's not
Right.
healthy.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
So how long have you been investigating then?
Whew, God, 15 or 16 years.
Wow.
Yeah, my son goes now. You know, he was really young when I started. He goes. So,
What does he think about them?
you know, his sisters, you know, I'm not their father, you know, they kind of, but he enjoyed going. I think he liked going with everybody, but the rocks that kind of startled him a little bit because, you know, you just can't blow that off. When you hear
Right.
noises, you hear a howl, you hear a wood knock, okay, you know, whatever. But then your rocks hitting the vehicle, and he was pretty close to a couple of those hits. You know, it's like, okay, this is serious. So then he actually seen the red eyes because we got out of there one night. I told him to get the hell in the Jeep, and he said as he got in the Jeep, he saw the thing turn. It actually followed him with its head, and it took him weeks to tell me that.
Wow.
So
Does he still go out with you now, or
he does. Yes, he does. He
has
does
he
good.
seen it?
No, he's not seen anything else other than the one time.
That's pretty wild. How old was he?
Well, he's 18 now.
How old was he when he saw it?
He's probably about 14 when that one happened.
Wow.
14 or 15, yeah.
Incredible. That's awful brave. I probably would have died right there. Passed out. I probably would have frozen in fear.
Well, the night of
So
2014, when I think back on that, I wonder, you know, here I am walking into the wood line, you know, with no light, like an idiot, and I'm thinking, what if I'd have took one or two more steps? Maybe this thing doesn't let out a roar. Maybe it discharges. Maybe it decides I'm. Maybe it takes that as me being aggressive, and it decides to take care of me. I mean, I think back to that. You know, like how close was that to being tragic? You know.
you're absolutely right. I mean, some Sasquatches are very aggressive. And I hear different stories where some of them are not. They're friendly. But, I try to tell people they're not pets.
No, they're not.
They're animals. So, and they're wild. Scientists don't want to believe they exist. We see things they say they don't exist. We hear things that we're not supposed to be heard. We got monsters washing up on beaches across the world. And, people take pictures of it. And for some reason, they dig a hole on the beach and bury it right away.
Yeah.
They don't haul it off to a lab and study it. Or something's caught in the fisherman's net.
Yeah. It's happening.
Doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. I mean, I'm a true believer. I never saw one. But I have a book here. It's called Unlucky Encounters by Kimley Cotter. I don't know if I can show you this or not by the pictures. I need a better camera on my laptop. Can you see anything?
Yes, I can.
All right. So her and her girlfriend went out somewhere in the country, stayed at a hotel, and they did their little thing for the weekend, a little getaway, and they were leaving, and the front desk was like, "Hey, ladies, I just want to let you know that it's bear season outside, and you got to be careful now, and make sure you stay on the trails, okay?" And they're like, "Okay, great, thank you." So they take off on a trail about an hour and a half, and they're walking, just talking, having fun, chit chatting, and Kimberly goes, "Stop!" Her friend's like, "Why?" She goes, "There's bears right there." So her friend turns around and starts walking fast backwards and turns around and walks faster. She reaches in her purse, pulls out a camera, and takes a picture, and she turns around and hauls ass too. Well, she goes home. Sometime during that week, she drops the camera off and gets her film developed. Now, remember, I said film developed. So she gets the pictures back, and she's going through them, and she looks at that one picture on her book cover, and she starts screaming. She calls her girlfriend up. I think the girlfriend thinks she's having a heart attack. You know, calm down. What's going on? What's going on? Calm down. She's like, you're not going to believe this. You know, you remember those bears? And the lady's like, yeah, we kind of ran from them. She goes, they weren't bears. They were Bigfoots. And one of them's holding a baby.
Wow.
And she couldn't believe it. So she ran over to her house, jumped in the car, and to go see this photograph. And she's like, oh my gosh. And they walked right upon them. And they didn't have a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 camera. They had one of those old point and shoots.
Yeah.
And for some reason, before she turned around, she got in her purse and went snap, put it back, and turned around and took off. A point and shoot camera. The cameras we used to use as kids.
Yep.
You know? And you can clearly tell they're not bears. And it's a really good picture. And that's why she named it Unlikely Encounters. But it's really interesting how scientists doesn't want to believe in certain things, but they exist. You know, Dogman. Dogman has become a hot topic the past 2 or 3, 4 years. We're seeing more sightings of Dogman than ever. And why is that? Do you believe in Dogman?
All right. This is probably where I'm going to make you mad. I just can't sign off on Dogman. And the reason why is I believe the Dogman sightings are Bigfoot that look weird. I think in that area, maybe the breeding population isn't that big, and they're kind of hooking up with their cousins and sisters and all that, and it's creating the look or whatever. Because to me, Bigfoot is whatever, whether it's part ape, part some type of hominid, whatever. If they were to get one, whatever, someday, it's going to fit in the puzzle somewhere. It's going to make sense. But something that's half dog, half man, that's supernatural. And, that's something I would shoot because that's just not supposed to be here. Bigfoot to me is terrestrial. It's been here. It's here before we were here. When it was just the Native Americans here, they lived side by side basically because Indians weren't killing everything and then putting strip malls in. But Dogman, I just can't wrap my head around that one.
And how
I'm
do you
sorry,
explain the footprints?
I don't know.
How you explain the land between the lakes?
George Taylor's from Minnesota and he lived there, and he doesn't he never talked about anything like that. So I don't know, man. It's just that's my opinion, and
Do you believe in UFOs?
yeah. I mean, there's just too much real estate out there for there to be nothing else. That'd kind of be sad if there wasn't.
So what people are filming and what's on the news are UFOs and flying around then?
Yeah, something is. A
What
lot of
would you
real
say?
estate up. Huh?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a lot of real estate up in space for it just to be us.
True. But what would I say to you if that was us flying those flying saucers?
Oh, like from the future coming back in time? Is that what you're talking about?
Or we already had the technology. You know,
Well,
Hitler built one,
he was trying. Yeah.
and it actually worked. They have actual footage of it flying. I think it was a 15 or 20-second clip. They still don't know where it's at. You know, they still don't understand the technology, where he got it from. You know, Hitler was before his time. The testing he was doing and stuff like that, you know, it's just unthinkable. It really is. But when it comes to cryptids and Bigfoot, you know, it's once you see your first one, you're hooked.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, because you saw something that people tell you that don't exist. You know, nobody's out in the woods at 2 or 3 in the morning knocking on trees. Nobody's growling at you. No human being can growl the way they growl.
No, the lung capacity you would have to do some of those howls and screams, and to broadcast it over such a distance, is beyond what a person can do. David Ellis, who's a professional sound analyst from Washington State, has we're lucky to be able to get a hold of him, and he's went through a lot of our recordings actually, and he said he can't say that we recorded Bigfoot since Bigfoot's not been officially classified, but he did say that we recorded no known animal in North America. And he explained how everything communicates in its own hertz band. He said this thing is between 330 and about 850, which means it's not a coyote, it's not a dog, it's not a person pretending to be something, it's not a deer, it's not a rabbit, it's not a wild boar, it is something unknown. And one of the recordings, it was one of the ones I sent you, actually pegged higher than a baboon on the spectrograph. So, Mr. Skeptic, that is evidence whether you like it or not, because you're going to say, oh, that's a dog. No, it's not. Because that's out the window. This guy is a professional, and he says no. So, deal with it.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, people gather evidence. I mean, you know, I said for years, you know, I know little Johnny runs in the middle of the woods at night in a gorilla suit drunk, causing havoc. I know that for a fact. You know, bless his heart.
Well, you got
But
Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum. Meldrum's looked at thousands of footprint casts, and he says not all of them are fake. Some of them are real. Some of them
that's
show evidence of a creature that's alive, that's walking. And
that is correct.
he has a PhD. He's a professional. When he says that, Mister Skeptic, he can't say, well, no, that guy's wrong because it has to be this. No, that guy's a professional. He said it's real, and you're just going to have to shut up and deal with it. Because that's his area of expertise.
All right.
I we've taken pictures. Now, Mike casted some footprints before he, I knew him and all that. I take pictures of them. I'm there for the audio. That's kind of what excites me. I figure, you got Meldrum, who's a professional and way beyond me, looking at footprint casts. So I'll let him handle that. I'm just I want to record something that I can bring home, listen to again and again, and then share with people, and then send to like a person like David Ellis and have him analyze it and say, hey, what you recorded is unknown. Hey, what you recorded is an owl, and that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's great. I was sitting there a couple of weeks ago, or no, it was about a week ago. And I was thinking, like you were thinking, sharing stuff, sharing evidence, recordings, footprints, and all that good stuff. And I kept thinking about it more and more. So I was thinking, how could I go by and do this and get something together? So I couldn't sleep that night. I was probably up, I don't know, 6 in the morning still. Couldn't sleep. So I was on Facebook, looking at other people's evidence. I'm a member of 807 groups.
Wow.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I own some of them too, and I'm a moderator of quite a few stuff as well. So it came to me, why don't you make a group where people can come and share their information? Because people send me information that they don't want me to share to the public. I mean, I've seen pictures, Mr. Miller, that looks like almost came out of National Geographic when it comes to Sasquatch. And they tell me how they beat it. They had their trail cams and bushes and stuff, and they run by it and walk by it. And I don't know if they see the infrared, like some people say, and hear it go off. I don't know, but they rip them off the trees. They rip them out of the bushes. They bite on them and they toss them 40, 50, 60 feet. And this guy told me they hunt them for days trying to find them. But they end up finding them. And you can see one that's holding it, looking at it, and it's got a shot of his eyeball. And I asked him, I said, why don't you share this stuff? He's like, Grizzly, I'll tell you why. I don't want people riding by up and down my street. I don't want people camping out in my woods. And I sure in the hell don't want any hunters around when it's hunting time. They're safe right now. There's a family of them. I've seen the young ones. They're twins. And I was like, okay. So I thought about that. So I came up with the group, and it's called Share Your Evidence Podcast, EVPs, Footprints, Howls and Growls. And this is where it's different. You can post stuff and hit a button or slide a button, and nobody knows who you are. It doesn't put any of your personal information up. You can post anything you want, audio, video. If you're doing a podcast, throw it on there, because people are going to it, looking at it, and all and in about some of the recordings. I can't believe that. Everybody's got so much to share, especially you out in the field, boots on the ground. You say you're recording stuff, but, people like me that belongs up to 800 and something groups, I can't keep up with all those. And I'm going to do a call out for all the admins on Facebook that I'm a member of. Thank you very much for letting me share my podcast on your shows or on your Facebook groups. I greatly appreciate that. It really means a lot to me. And thank you for your guest from some of your groups. I greatly appreciate that too. But that I designed that, and I thought, well, hell, let's give it a try. What was it going to hurt?
Right,
well,
good idea.
It actually start working. Some people has actually start making things, or not making things, but putting up some of their evidence and not leaving their information, which is fine. First off, you're not going to get ridiculed in any of my groups. Number two, nobody's going to bully, troll you at all. You know, my rule is if you have anything negative to say, scroll on. Don't do it. I don't tolerate it. Neither does all my admins with me. Because I got quite a few admins to monitor everything. And, you know, Mr. Miller, I hopefully you will share some of your stuff. You know, I really do.
We probably do that. Just we take a lot of the times we just take our stuff straight to the public. We do lectures at libraries, at conferences, and we're actually doing one tomorrow at the Germantown, Ohio theater that's there. We're going to, you know, we actually show pictures from the area that we research at, you know, taken during the daytime, of course, and then we have audio files embedded in the pictures. We tell the story, what happened in some of these places, and we play the audio.
That's pretty cool.
We've actually put it on a CD. We have, I'll probably have the shipment sometime next week. We put a lot of it on a CD, on two CDs actually, just to, you know, because sooner or later your phone's going to die, and we do that to, you know, safeguard it. So now we've got it on a CD.
Yeah. Well, I just sent you the link to the group just in case.
Okay.
Yeah. And I always tell all investigators, use it. You know, let other investigators hear what you have to say. Because I mean, there's some people out there that'll join maybe up to 5 groups and that's it. You know, you're not going to get the full effect of researchers, investigation, boots on the ground just joining 5 groups.
Yeah.
You need to join multiple groups to hear the evidence, see what one group's doing compared to another group. Maybe you learn something from what this group's done that you never done. Who knows?
Yep.
You know? But I made it, and I thought, well, 2 things are going to happen. It's either going to take off or it's going to flop. It's up to everybody, not me.
Yep.
So I got the bowl made, and all you have to do is fill it. So,
Yep.
But back to Sasquatch, you know, did I ever tell you what Mr. Parker showed me?
No.
So Mr. Parker told me, and it's been confirmed by 4 other people that has been in the field for 30-something years, had no idea about this formula, dropped their phones or got away from laptops. And I was like, what in the hell are they doing? And next thing you know, I hear a tape measure come out. And I hear them cussing and everything. I'll be, and blah, 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 beep, 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 blah, blah, blah. And it's always the same words every time. I don't know if they're if they have the same type of memory or brain and they talking to each other. It's exactly the first words out of their mouth. I'll be damned, and then a couple of other words. So if you take that footprint and you measure it, right? So let's say you have an 8-inch footprint. You measure that, every 2 inches is a foot. So an 8-inch footprint is how tall?
16. Well, never mind. Is 2 foot?
As
You're
a
asking
foot.
me. You're asking me
It's
to
a
do
foot.
math. I mean, I've had a long week at work. You're asking for a lot.
That's okay. So an 8 foot. So you got 2, 4, 6, 8. So that's a 4-footer. So that's a juvie. So when you start getting up to the 10s and 12s, you're getting up to the 8s and the 9s, 9.5s. And they're like, how did you learn about this? And I was like, I didn't. I was like, some guy on the chat came on and was like, hey, here's a formula to figure out if you don't know how big it is, measure the footprint and measure it by every 2 inches is a foot. And I was like, no. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. And he was talking, carrying on, during my live show. And the guy I was interviewing got away, got a cast, measured it, measured a few others. He said, by God, Chris, it is. I said, well, how do you know it is? He says, because I actually took the measurements from the footprint up to the tree limb where I saw it. And it's almost exactly on
wow.
each one. So I'm sharing that information with everybody. So if you do come across the footprint, at least you know an average size that it could be. To me, it was pretty interesting.
That is.
It really is. So I'm hearing lately, I'm seeing a lot more juveniles, young ones running around. So I guess breeding season is started or getting ready to start up again. I don't know. I don't know when they mate.
Don't either.
I know they can do owl calls. They can whistle.
Yep.
They can bark. They can do all kinds of stuff, mimic almost anything in the woods.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. Yep.
I had one guy who was sitting by the fire. He was like, listen to that beautiful bird. He's like, bullshit, that's not a bird, that's a Sasquatch. He said, we don't have that type of bird here, and it's 2:00 in the morning. Birds ain't out. And the guy looked at him, he's like, oh, I never thought of that. So they got their gear ready and all that other stuff, and the recordings, and they did their little thing. They ended up getting the flare hit. So, but it went the opposite way. But like I said, you just never know.
That's true.
I mean, what do you think about Sasquatch?
I think they're curious about us. I think they're very leery. I mean, they probably teach their young ones to assume that every one of us has a gun and that we're a threat. But I think some of the ones, especially the juveniles, I think they're curious. I've been places where we've sit around a fire 2 or 3 in the morning, not even bigfooting, just drinking beer and shoot and telling stories, and had little rocks come down and fall around us and hit us in the leg and stuff. So they were throwing small pebbles like rocks, but they weren't throwing to hurt anybody. I think they were playing. They don't have cable TV, and they don't, and they were amusing themselves.
Right.
And we're going to try to do some stuff to maybe let them know that we're not a threat. We're going back to that area in October, and we're going to take some food items, and then we're also going to take gifts. We're going to take, some costume jewelry. We're going to take stuff that lights up, and going to do a few challenges. We're going to the peanut butter jars are good. We're going to take some containers with a screw-off lid, because that kind of eliminates other animals. Because a squirrel or something isn't going to unscrew the lid; they're going to chew through. But we're going to put chocolate bars inside of those and some other stuff, and just see what happens.
Oh my God. I hate to see what happens when you do that. By the way, they love Snickers.
To what?
I said they love Snickers, by the way. So if you didn't know that, just letting you know now.
You cut out. I didn't catch that.
I said they love Snickers, by the way.
Oh, Snickers. Okay.
Yes, sir. They
They're
sure
probably
do.
get Hershey. I'm more partial to a Hershey bar, plain Hershey bar. So that's what they're going to get.
I tell you, you're something else, Mr. Miller. But
Just see what happens, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But it's just amazing, though, what scientists don't want to believe and want to research or anything like that about stuff and try to help us. And, we know they're out there.
Yeah.
We know there's things that go bump into the night. Mr. Miller has been a great guest on our show. Wonderful to have you, and I greatly appreciate you. Love to have you back again. Love to have you back with maybe a partner or two. I can take up to 10 people on this.
Okay.
So
you should play one of those audio clips.
Yes, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be on my show, all you have to do is email me at Grizzly the Paranormal at gmail.com. That's Grizzly the Paranormal at gmail.com. From all around the world, from coast to coast, this is where we depart and say goodnight. But once again, in 15 minutes, I'll be live again. Until then, everybody, good night.